Hello, and welcome to my podcast. This podcast is for you if you're really interested in nutrition and health and well-being, if you're interested in supporting your nervous system. Perhaps you want to support digestive issues, perhaps like IBS or bloating, or you're just generally into well-being. And the reason I started this podcast is because there's a lot out here. It can be a bit overwhelming with so much input. And so I'm starting it off as a sort of 10-minute podcast to give some value, but not overload. I am a registered nutritional therapist and cognitive behavioral hypnotherapist based in the UK. And I am very passionate about natural health. I'm very passionate about looking after our own health and well-being, whether that's mental health or physical health. I specialize in supporting people with digestive issues like IBS through supporting with them through nutrition and root causes, but also through hypnosis and supporting the nervous system. And this podcast will be touching on nutrition. We'll be talking about nervous system tools and ways of supporting the nervous system. We'll be talking about the gut-brain connection. We'll also be talking about the other ways that the brain connects to the body and the way our thoughts connect to the body, and other just general lifestyle info. It would be amazing to have your interaction, so feel free to contact me in the comments or on email or message if you would like some questions answered, if there's a subject that interests you that you'd like me to dive into. And of course, if you like and share and subscribe, that really helps my channel to grow and for YouTube to share it with more people. So that would be really good. Thank you. So, this episode is going to be all about how modern life affects our health and our digestion. So, we're just going to kick off with that one, and hopefully it will resonate with you. So, modern life is a bit of a broad term, isn't it? So, what do I mean by that? I think is with modern life, we have sort of lost touch a little bit with nature. We're very much plugged into gadgets. We're plugged into artificial light. We move at a very fast pace. And so actually, there's not a lot we can do about some of those things. So if you've got a stressful job, if you've got a really busy lifestyle, I'm not suggesting that you need to change that particularly. But when we are on go, go, go mode, or we're in information overload, or we're a bit overstimulated, whether that's by the artificial lights that surround us, by the screens we're on, by social media, by content, by just the things that people are saying to us at work, we can't necessarily do anything about that. But it can impact our digestion, it can impact our health and our mental health, but we can take some little steps to support that in a sort of realistic way without having to leave your job and just go and live in the middle of nowhere doing nothing, which might be tempting. So let's start off by I'll just explain to you how this kind of busy lifestyle really does affect our bodies and our brains, and then some really simple things that we can do to support that. So first of all, you might already know, if you've watched some of my videos before, that the brain and the gut have this connection. The gut is full of nerves, and nerves travel backwards and forwards to the brain and the body. And it's like a sort of messenger signal. And so the interesting thing about that is that we can affect our digestion and our gut through our thoughts, through our brain, but we can also through our emotions, what we're experiencing. But sometimes when we are physically experiencing symptoms, that, for example, tension, like muscle tension, that sends a message up to the brain that you must be tense and stressed. So therefore, those tension and stress, the stress hormones are produced. So there's like a two-way communication going on. So it's important to realize that actually the body and the brain get stressed by things that probably we take for granted and we don't even realize are stressful. So an example of that might be lighting. So I don't know if you're ever noticed when you go shopping, or particularly in a supermarket, it's got so many like bright lights. those lights are very stimulating, and lights have changed over the years from the old-fashioned incandescent lights, which have got a broader range of light spectrums on there, some of which are quite helpful, to these LED lights, which are actually not very helpful for us, and they can really stimulate the nervous system, and it's an external stress. So that's something that can make us a little bit overstimulated. And of course, there's sounds everywhere we go. And thinking about that example of shopping in the supermarket, quite a lot of shops have got music blaring, supermarkets, and that can be a bit distracting if you're not really feeling, very relaxed. We're also always taking in information. We're always consuming things. So, for example, it's really popular to, well, this is a podcast. It's very popular to be listening to a podcast whilst you're doing something else. And we often find that we're doing several things at once, which, although that sounds really sensible, in some cases it can cause us to be a bit overstimulated, and that can put the brain into this fight or flight stress response. And actually, sometimes when people experience problems sleeping, it might not be to do with their stress in terms of, they might not have a problem going on at the moment, or they might not have had too much coffee. It might be just that the brain is over consuming content, even if it's like pleasant stuff, and the brain just hasn't had time to meander on its own without this input. And of course, just the busy go from one thing to the next at work can keep us very overstimulated. What happens when the brain is in that sort of fight or flight mode, or if the brain detects stress? For example, if it perceives something as stress, even if it's not stressful. So, for example, that lighting or scrolling through the news on your phone or anything like that, even if it's not a real stress for you, the brain might perceive that as a stress. And how that affects the gut is that because it's perceiving as a threat, it is putting the body into that sympathetic nervous system, which is that fight or flight, which you've probably heard that expression, fight, flight, or freeze. And really, when we're in that more that hypervigilant state, what happens is the blood flow goes from our going from everywhere it needs to go. It's like the front part of our brain, the digestive tract, the reproductive organs, like a fair share everywhere is needed. When we're in that fight or flight, it really prioritizes the most essential places for the blood to flow. So like the heart, not the same part of the brain, so we're unable to make such decisions, where our decisions are very much based on quick here and now rather than rational. And also it sends the blood flow away from the digestive area. So it really does impact the way that the digestion is working. Another way that it affects the way that digestion is working is because we're switching off that function, because it's not needed in an emergency, because we're supposed to be running away, is the actual digestive process in terms of producing the digestive enzymes. We have enzymes that break down all the different components of the food, and we've also got stomach acid. And both of these are really key for breaking down and absorbing our foods. And also, they have a real role in symptoms. So if you're someone that finds that you are getting a lot of bloating and wind, your ability to digest and absorb your food with your enzymes and your stomach acid, it could be to do with that, because it's absolutely key that we are breaking down this food properly and extracting the nutrients. And any sort of unusual symptoms can be caused by impaired digestion. And the body is doing this out of cleverness. It's not trying to punish us, but in reality, what it's doing is impairing our digestion. It's impairing our ability to produce stomach acid and digestive enzymes. And also, you might find, when you're really stressed or shocked and you get a dry mouth. And it's, again, the same thing. It's like the saliva isn't produced because it's not seen as a necessity. Saliva is one of the first things that your body encounters when it's as part of the digestive process. It's one of the key, one of the first things that happens when we start to break down our food. We chew it and use the saliva to break it down. And the stomach acid is absolutely key for breaking down nutrients, breaking down food, and also it's part of our immune system. It kills bugs and so on. So it's really important that we look after our stomach acid, and we have the right amount of acidity. It should be acidic. We should have plenty of it. And this stomach acid actually can be less optimal as we age, when we're exposed to long-term stress, not just short-term stress, in response to medications. So much more. Also, if the diet is a bit low in protein and zinc and certain nutrients, stomach acid can be impaired. But from a day-to-day perspective, your stress level will impact it. And also the motility. So motility is how fast your food is traveling around your body. So when you're stressed, you might find that you need to rush to the loo quite urgently, or your stools are loose, and that is again all part of this fight or flight response. Or it might be, if you're stressed in a more prolonged way, you might end up constipated. So it really is important to consider the nervous system when you are wanting to support your general health, but also your digestion. So what can you do? Obviously, we can't magically wave a magic wand and take away all your stresses. But what I do suggest is, when it comes to eating your meals, that you give yourself a few minutes away from distraction, away from stress. So if that's lunchtime at work for you, I appreciate that sometimes the culture is very much go, go, go. You don't take 5 minutes for yourself. And I understand that, and that's not really right. But, I do appreciate that's how that's how it is sometimes. But if you can take away for at least 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever you can manage, away from your desk, away from your devices, away from any stimulation, anything to do with work really, just so that your body can feel safe enough to actually release the right enzymes for you to digest and absorb your food. And some of my clients who experience bloating tell me that when they start to really slow down, stop rushing their food, chewing really thoroughly, and actually just focusing on their food, their bloating really improves. So enjoying the food, enjoying it, being mindful, not rushing. And the other thing as well, apart from the digestive process, is our hunger signals. When we're rushing our food, our body doesn't get the chance to experience or catch up with how full we are. Now, for some people, this could result in overeating, but this can also go the other way, and people can undereat. They can eat quickly and think, oh, well, I've just had a meal, I must be full. You can just make that assumption that what you've eaten is satisfying. But if it's not particularly balanced, so for example, if there's not enough protein or fat there, it might be that you feel full maybe in the short term, or that you think you're full because you've just eaten. But it might be that you are not properly full or satisfied, but you're ignoring your fullness and hunger signals because you're distracted and you're busy. So paying attention to these fullness and satisfaction cues is important, because if you haven't eaten enough, later on in the day you may feel hungry, and then you might be tempted to eat things that are very high energy that you might really wish that you didn't eat, or maybe even reach for some caffeine, which might disrupt your sleep later. So it all has an impact. So in summary, if you want to think about how modern life supports or interferes with your digestion, although there's not necessarily lots of things you can do about it, what I would say is, if you can, step away from your desk and your computer and your devices, even if it's just for 5-10 minutes. If you can go outside and have a walk around the block, or just even 5 minutes just sitting outside, even better. But taking your break from stimulation, chewing your food really mindfully. So even if you are stuck at your desk, chewing more thoroughly, slowing down, can really optimize your digestion. I hope you found that helpful. And if you have enjoyed this video, please like it, please share it, and also please comment and let me know how I can help you further. Let me know subjects of interest, any questions, and I'd be happy to answer them. I'm intending to publish one of these podcasts every week. So let's see how we go. Hope you've enjoyed it, and thank you very much for being here.